The bodies of 19 Palestinians have reportedly been recovered from the site of an Israeli airstrike in al-Mawasi. Now, the tent camp had been declared a safe zone by the IDF, but witnesses say it was hit by at least 4 missiles overnight. The missiles left 3 craters in the camp, burying more than 20 tents. At least one of those craters appears to be around 9 meters deep. The Gaza Civil Defense has reported that, quote, entire families disappeared in the Mawasi Khan Yunis massacre under the sand in deep holes. Overnight, rescue workers and residents tried to find missing people, combing through the sand of the craters with garden tools and their bare hands. Other footage taken at the scene shows rescue workers retrieving body parts, including what appears to be a human leg. The attack has left broken tents and belongings thrown across the site. The Gazan Ministry of Health has reported that at least 60 people were wounded in the attack. They add that a number of victims remain under the rubble, under the sand and on the roads. Now, the Gazan Health Ministry had initially reported that 40 people had been killed in the strike. They later downgraded that figure to 19 based on the number of bodies that have so far arrived in nearby hospitals, but they've warned that figure is likely to grow. The Al-Mawasi Humanitarian Zone is located on Gaza's coast west of Khan Yunis. Over the past few months, repeated Israeli evacuation orders have shrunk the area of the camp, while displaced Palestinians have continued to arrive. According to the UN, there are now around 34,000 Palestinians squeezed into every square kilometre of the zone. That makes it amongst the most densely populated areas on Earth. Palestinians across Gaza have been repeatedly urged to relocate to the zone, but this isn't the first time the IDF has bombed them after they moved there. In July, Israeli airstrikes on al-Mawasi killed 90 people and injured 300 more. At the time, the IDF said the strikes had killed Mohammed Deif, the head of Hamas's military wing. That has never been confirmed, with Hamas claiming he's still alive. There have been 4 other air assaults on the camp since its designation as a safe zone last December. According to the IDF, the most recent strikes were, quote, precise and intelligence-based and targeted at a Hamas control center in the camp. They also claim to have killed 3 Hamas fighters involved in the October 7th attack on Israel. Hamas denies that any fighters were present at the scene, and the size of the craters left at al-Mawasi appear to be the result of heavier munitions, perhaps from amongst those supplied by the US in recent months. According to the Israeli government, it's received more than 50,000 tons of arms and equipment from the United States since the war began. And the US completed its 500th air delivery of weapons to Israel just last month. One of the men responsible for that unfettered flow of bombs to Israel is US Secretary of State Antony Blinken. And on the day of Israel's latest strike on Gaza's humanitarian zone, he's been in London meeting Foreign Secretary David Lammy, where he said this about the US's commitment to peace in the region.
From day one, our purpose has been not only to make sure that Israel can effectively ensure that October 7th never happens again, but also that the conflict doesn't spread. And we're intent on that. But the longer all of this goes on, the greater the risks of just that happening. So I think for Israel, clearly for the Palestinian people, and especially Palestinians in Gaza, who desperately need this conflict to be over so that they can get the help that they need and begin to rebuild their lives. For every country in the region, the interest is clear. I can't speak to what's in the mind of Mr. Sinwar and where his interests lie. He will have to make those judgments for himself. But we remain resolute in working to bring the ceasefire over the line because it would open up so many more positive prospects.
It's so just grimly disingenuous, isn't it? Sort of talking about, and more than anyone, it's the Palestinians who are suffering in Gaza. They're being bombed by the weapons you sold the state who's doing the bombing, right? You can't stand up there and say, oh, I feel so much for these people. We're trying to bring this to an end. We're trying to win a ceasefire while you are the one arming the main belligerent. Helena, what did you make of Antony Blinken's visit to London today?
Again, I have to echo your sentiments here. It's just, they keep trying to pull the wool over people's eyes. That all we need to do to be able to get ourselves to a position of having a peace deal is just people talk. If all we do is talk, somehow we'll get there. It's interesting now that the press in the United States, and to an extent here as well, have actually started reporting in earnest that it is Israel who keep collapsing these peace talks. So for Blinken to come here and say, "Oh, we want to make sure that we actually get a ceasefire deal to stop the people dying in Gaza," and I'm like, well, first of all, you know, it's Israel who are the ones who are scuttling these peace talks, and they have done many occasions. There have been a couple of times where Hamas have changed things last minute in terms of the ceasefire agreement, but these are few and far between in comparison to how Israel have approached having these talks over a ceasefire. Because of course Netanyahu doesn't want one. If we have a ceasefire, it's the end of his premiership. It's his government crashed down. He might end up going to jail. And so the only way that Blinken can, in earnest, come here and say, we actually want to push towards a peaceful settlement, is by taking material actions to force the hands of the Israelis in this instance, which means, of course, stop selling them the bloody weapons. Stop giving them political and diplomatic cover. Like, these people don't respond to rhetoric, they respond to action. Even small actions like the UK took in removing a very small amount of arms licenses. It was so much of a slight that Netanyahu was still mad, even though it was 8%. And that's a precedent that's technically been set now, even if it's only a minor one. You don't even get a single concession in that regard with regards to the United States. A single concession at all. So again, it just seems that the temerity is crazy to come here and then stand up and say, well, we want to make sure that we get a peaceful settlement for the people of Gaza, whilst fundamentally undermining that position with every material action that they've taken. And just before I finish up here, one note in terms of the strike on the humanitarian zone. First of all, it seems to me at this point that the humanitarian zones don't even serve much purpose. If they keep telling us, well, Hamas uses human shields, we have to attack the camps, we have to attack the humanitarian zones because that's where the chief of the Al-Qassam brigades was. Well, if you're just going to attack them anywhere, regardless of their humanitarian status, as long as there's a Hamas militant there, then what is even the utility of these places regardless? And Hamas have claimed that none of their fighters were in this zone. There was a command and control center there, apparently according to Israeli intelligence, something that has very much been circumspect in terms of how we actually look at the veracity of their claims. When the Al-Qassam Brigade's website will proudly proclaim when one of their soldiers or fighters or militants has been martyred, like the 10 who were killed in the West Bank. They're all on the Al-Qassam website. You can go and read it for yourself. Yet they haven't claimed anybody in these attacks on the humanitarian zone. So I don't believe a word of what Israel is saying about this.